Hello and welcome everyone to our first session of our FCI Live 2024 series. We are so excited to be here. Thank you for being a part of it. And thank you to our champion sponsors, Columinate and National Co-op Grocers, for making this series possible. We have this season a record registration level. So many people who are coming out to participate. We really appreciate y'all coming and being part of the conversation. And I'm excited. Our first session that we'll be having today is with Allanah Hines from Weaver Street Market about embodying principles for thriving norms. And this one, you guys, if you follow our social media, you know, this is the first session that has met our max participants for the session. We actually had to increase it when we have only had that happen once before. In our entire history with this series. So clearly this is a topic that has struck a nerve, and we've seen registrants from startup food co-ops and from established open food co-ops. This is something that we've been hearing demand to talk about more and more, and Allanah has amazing knowledge and passion around this. We're so excited to have her here being part of the series. So I'm going to hand it over to her in just a second. We're going to let her pull up the slides. The way we're going to handle conversation today is that Allanah is going to present. Please put all your comments and questions in the chat. We love to see them. I will be, if there's something really particular to the moment, I will actually verbalize those questions to Allanah. Otherwise, a lot of them you may see we'll wait those comments and questions to the end, but usually the chat is quite lively in these sessions. Feel free to even be like, oh, my experience of this is this, or, you know, to share comments, ideas, links with each other in the chat. That is absolutely welcome. With that, I'm going to turn this over to the wonderful Allanah Hines, and she's going to lead us through.
Hello, everybody. Please let me know if I have any issues with sound quality or anything. And we are all going to want to walk on the hope that my dog doesn't see something out the window and start barking. So, for one, thank you everybody for being here. This is exciting as my first time presenting with the FCI Live series, and knowing that everybody's so excited. I'm always excited to talk co-op. Never thought that I would be that person, but I am. So thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you, JQ, for facilitating this session, and hopefully we can get some conversation started. So let's jump in. My name, as JQ said, is Allanah Hines. I work with Weaver Street Market. I am the manager of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I'm also the chair of our board of directors. So I'm a worker owner. I've been with Weaver Street for over 15 years. Never imagined that would be the case. So I'm excited to have this conversation with everybody about essentially co-op identity. I've been having this conversation for a few years, especially working for a co-op in North Carolina and working for a place and questioning, do I see myself here? Learning more about the co-op, really what the purpose of the co-op is, the way that the co-op works, the co-op norms, things like that. So I'm excited. We're going to talk about the 8 co-op principles. What I find oftentimes, especially in speaking to startup co-ops, is when I say the co-op principles, they may have some knowledge of it, but they're not completely sure. What I've found in the past couple of years and having this conversation with people about co-op principles is kind of like reading a history book. You love it or you hate it. You see it, maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't, but as you're starting your co-op, as you're really building, you know why you want a co-op. You know what's led you to this particular business model, but really grounding yourself in these principles, or even going to other co-ops and maybe seeing principles reflected in their work, but bringing it back home to something that makes sense seems a little difficult. So instead of just saying, hey, here are the co-op principles, for me, it's more a thing of embodying those principles and creating norms within your co-op that reflect the community in a way that you can thrive. So in today's conversation, we're going to talk about your co-op identity, reflecting even these photos up here, your co-op's DNA. Who do you see when you look back at yourself? The footprint of your co-op, the fingerprint of your co-op, and really grounding it back into what are these principles. So a note that I will also provide is I do say the 8 co-op principles. There are officially 7 co-op principles. It has not been completely taken on by everybody. So the international groups are still in conversation of, you know, the 8th principle, how to state it, how to really incorporate it. but a lot of smaller co-ops and just a lot of co-ops in general have embodied also this 8th principle. So in my norms, I have also listed this 8th principle because I do find it as being important and really something that, especially this day and age, is important as we build our co-ops and really build this business model to reflect our community. So I think my next question is, how do I get to the next slide? There we go. So as with everything, co-ops have evolved. So if you've heard anything about co-op history, you've probably heard about these guys on the left side, the Rochdale pioneers. This is really where the stake of co-op history a lot of times falls in. So when people talk about where did cooperatives start, how did we really get into this? It's these guys, these 13 guys that came in and said, hey, we want to kind of change what we see happening around. We want to build our transactions and the way that we receive and give into our community instead of these larger entities coming in and saying, this is what you need and this is the price that you're going to pay. So I add this in here because a lot of people either know this group or you may hear it, especially as you're building your co-op, as you learn more about co-op history. Also in here is their first building from 1844. So this is a co-op and it made sense. It made sense to their community. It made sense to their business practices of this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to serve people. It's in the middle of their main street. Everybody's able to walk in. Everybody's able to give and receive in transactions in this, and then moving it forward. What you see on this right side is actually Weaver Street Market. So not just anything, but this is our co-op. So this picture was taken last year in 2023, and this is genuinely how it looks on any given day. Except the weekends, you may see people hula hooping outside. You might see a jazz brunch happening out there, but this is kind of the evolution of a co-op. So what's different? The way it looks. What's the same? The co-op principles. So even 100 years apart, essentially, we're both building these entities that reflect our community in a way that we understand, in a way that our community asks for. So our co-ops, Weaver Street co-ops, are built so that we have an outdoor space, so that people can come and gather, and so that you can just be there all day and be yourself. So the way that we embody those principles was that we said, we want our community to come in and to feel like you can be here all day. It's a space where no matter what anything else looks like, when you come here, you can participate in the co-op, you can just be around the co-op, but you can be in this environment that feels familiar. And I feel like I'm a part of it. Co-ops in general were founded on promoting democracy, cooperation, and really unifying this mutual aid. So not just coming in and saying, this is what you need, but essentially saying, this is what our community needs. So in the start, I'll speak of Weaver Street Market. In the start of Weaver Street, it really was a thing of, we were guaranteed that the community said, and speaking to our community, we want healthy food, we want fresh food, we want nutritious food, and we want it from our local community. Now, grocery stores are fantastic, but we want something that gives more than just food. We want something that's going to give back to our community, that our kids can come in and maybe they can play outside, that donates in a way that actually feels like we're donating instead of a way that feels extractive or that feels like I'm pressured into giving in some way, but also something that we can be really proud of. So no matter how we interact with the co-op, we're really, really excited to now come and engage with the co-op. So you might be asking yourself, what are these principles that you're even talking about? Ta-da! Here they are. These are the co-op principles. So if you haven't already seen them, we'll delve into them just a little bit. This is kind of the history lesson of it all. Starting with the voluntary and open membership. What does that mean? It's voluntary to join, and it's open to everyone, no discrimination. Anybody and everybody are invited to be a part of the co-op. Democratic member control, everybody has a vote. So all of your members have a vote. No one is more than the other. It's a democracy. I will say it moves as a slower process, as we all know that democracies do. When everybody has to move forward together, it takes a bit longer, but it's also worthwhile. You have that conversation. People are coming together and it makes sense. Doesn't always go as planned. It's not always pretty, but your co-op moves forward because we are moving together. Members' economic communication. This is how your member or economic participation. This is how your members participate with your co-op. For us, come in, shop with the co-op, be a part of what we're doing. A lot of co-ops have volunteer programs, so you can volunteer for a length of time. Maybe you get a discount, maybe you get a particular incentive, but it's coming in and it's finding a way that the bottom line isn't just dollars. The bottom line is actually participating with the 360 co-op in the way that things happen. So a lot of times that also means going to the co-op and suggesting products for them, saying, hey, I'm buying this right down the street. Is there any way that y'all could actually carry it? Because I would just buy it here. Those are ways that you're participating in the bottom line that you oftentimes don't see in large businesses. It's not often that you can go to Apple and say, you know what I really want to happen on my computer is this one thing. And they say, that absolutely makes sense. We're going to change all the computers for you. We're going to offer this. You can go into a co-op oftentimes, and we want to hear from the community. We want to reflect the community because we want you to come in and to feel and see yourself when you walk into our environment. Autonomy and independence. The co-op is a separate business entity. That's really just it. So the co-op isn't a part of something huge, something really grand. This is really important because the co-op is going to make deals with other entities. So you're going to have a deal with the bank, for instance. You're going to have a deal with stakeholders, with funders. When you do that, we're going to move back to that second principle. It's democratic. So when you're going in and you're voting, your members are voting on your board. Your members are voting on your moves and on your policies and how you move forward. So when you're talking about this independent business entity, you're voting on how you're going to move forward when you're making these really large decisions. And you're also a separate entity. Very important to know and understand. Education, training, and information. It says everything. Not just are you learning, are you constantly figuring out how to move forward? You're looking at the competition, you're looking at, how to really double down and how to be multi-generational. You're also teaching others about your co-op. So it's not just saying our doors are open, come be here. It's also saying, do you know about our co-op? Do you know why we started? Do you know why we're here? Do you know what we actually do? So you can come into Weaver Street and say, okay, this is a grocery store, but you can also say, oh, wait a minute. So you work with these local organizations. Wait, you're collecting books, but you sell groceries. Why? Because we know and understand that food is only one pillar of wellness. Food also ties to literacy. Food also ties to housing. Food ties to financial wealth. So when we look at our partners and when we talk to our partners, we understand having food is important, but also having that financial literacy is important. And having that literacy of and about your community and really connecting with your community in a different way is also important. Next, cooperation amongst co-ops. It's exactly what we're doing right here. We do not work in a silo. We cannot. You can be very, very strong, but we're stronger together. It doesn't mean that everything you do is going to be exactly like another co-op. You may speak to another co-op and say, okay, this sounds like it would work, but maybe it wouldn't work for my community. Because remember, your co-op reflects your community. So maybe a book drive wouldn't work where you are, but maybe it would. Maybe another drive, maybe a food drive or a clothing drive or something that really connects with your community. And then also having those conversations of, we tried this. Have you tried this and did it work? We don't have to reinvent the wheel. I cannot say that enough. You do not have to reinvent the wheel. And the cooperation can be anything. It can be coming to a webinar, it can be an email, it can be visiting. I personally love when people come and visit our co-op. We do it quite often. I actually just before this scheduled 2 tours just to come in and see, how do you make this work? Where do you get your equipment? How do you incorporate a hot bar and a salad bar open every single day? Have those conversations with people that are doing it, that have done it. See what works. See what their progress has been. We've been around over 35 years. We can tell you 35 years of opportunities and obstacles, just so you don't have to do that. You start from where we are and you grow from there. Concern for the community. I'll say it could probably be a game for as many times as I'll say community in this hour, but concern for the community is essentially connecting with your community. So it's going in, and it's also making sure that you're not extractive to the location. So you're not going in and saying, we're going to make all of these jobs and you're going to be able to do all of these things, but nobody really feels like they can interact with the place that they work. A co-op is unique. So you want to go in and you want people to actually be able to see themselves. I see myself working here. I see leadership opportunity. I see that, if my kids say, oh, I'm going to go to the co-op with my friends and grab a bite, that you're thinking, cool, that sounds, I know that there's a safe space. I know the people that work there. I can call and make sure that my kids get there. They're genuinely, you can probably call our Carrboro store and ask if your kid is there, and the cashier probably knows them. It sounds crazy, but it's literally like walking into Carrboro's living room. You walk in, you know the people, you feel safe because you know that we're genuinely talking community. It also refers to your connections within the community. When we talk about, we say that we want nutritious food, are we also talking about all people? We're talking about the elderly. We're talking about the working public. We're talking about children. And really defining, who do you want to impact? What is your impact as a co-op? Start this in your DNA. When you open your doors, who do you want to impact and how? It's all about, where do you want your footprint to go? When people move away, when people leave, will they say, man, I always loved visiting Weaver Street Market. This was always a really fun place for me. I would go. I remember they had jazz brunches. They had some of the best product selection. I remember my favorite cashiers. That's what we want. We want the community to come back and say, this makes sense. And then diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yes, it explains itself, but does it? Diversity, equity, and inclusion essentially is saying, take a look around you with eyes wide open. Who's here? Who's not here? Who are you talking to and who are you not talking to? If you drove 5 miles of your location down every street, even the ones that you don't drive when you go home, is everybody that you drive past included in your member makeup, in your board makeup, in your community members, the ones that you're helping, the ones that you're reaching out to, that you're saying, hey, have you been here? I know you're not a member, but just stop by. I'll give you a tour. Let's just walk through. It's a pretty neat place. Here's some events that we have going on. Here's some organizations that we work with. These are your current and your potential members. So it's not just the people that sign on in your capital campaign and say, yes, I'm here to support. It's the people that are thinking, I need to see this thing first. I'm not sure, because it sounds like you're selling me a dream. I want to make sure that when I walk in, it actually does feel like I belong here, that someone is able to help me understand, what does it mean to tier my product? I've never bought bulk. I don't buy bulk at the place where I shop. So how does this feel? Because it'll be a new feeling for a lot of people. So bringing everybody in and not just saying, yes, you're here, but come in, come join us in any way that feels comfortable to you. We welcome you. So that's our history lesson. I hope that was fun. I hope that was good. Now, I'll be honest, I would ask myself, what does this have to do with me? This is great and it feels good. When I think of co-op principles, I think of something that actually looks like me. This looks a little Rochdale Pioneers. Great, I get it. I think of this. When I think of my 8 co-op principles, I think of people. When I'm thinking of who's in my co-op, when I build my co-op, as we're just talking about the business plan, we know that we have this different business plan. We don't want to be large corporate. We actually want to include the community, but what does that mean? Where have I seen that? And how do I know that I can actually achieve that? Because it sounds a little pie in the sky. So when I think of a voluntary and open membership, I think that people come as you are. You feel like, yeah, I can be here. This is everybody. And nobody's going to discriminate against me when I walk in. When I think of a democratic member control, yeah, we're all here, but we're all voting. When I'm thinking of an economic participation, I'm thinking of, how are people participating in my co-op? Do we have a volunteer program? Do we have a way to to really reach out to these vulnerable populations that may not get employment opportunities and may not get benefits or may not get opportunities to the goods and services that we have, because we have the ability to really ground ourselves in that, to say this is our target population. This does not mean that we won't make sales. This does not mean that we won't be prosperous, but this does mean that we are going to impact the community in a way that we've seen so many other companies not really able to get into. So when I look at each of these principles, I'm genuinely thinking, what if we redefine some of these terms? So when I think of concern for community, yes, I'm thinking of the people, but I'm also thinking of the landscape. Are we working with vendors? Are we following practices ourselves that are not stripping the earth? Very important. So we can say we want to help the people, but are we helping our surroundings? Are we working in a way that's working against global warming? Are we making sure that the animals that we have in our meat case really are being treated fairly? And what are those practices? Build that into your DNA, into your absolute footprint to say, okay, this makes sense. And this seems like something that we can actually do. It's not the easy process, but it's doable because it's the people. So it's your members. It's when people suggest, hey, there's actually this dairy farmer right down the street. They're pretty small, but I'm curious if we can find a way to get them on our shelf. I'm curious if we can find a way to actually bring them into our retail environment to where they can start to revitalize their local business. Because we all know the statistics. Essentially, there are a lot of large companies that own a lot of it. We're bringing it back. We're saying, can you see yourself on the shelf? Maybe you're speaking to members that make products, that have their own products that they want to see on the shelves, and you're thinking, okay, what are we doing to make sure that we're including that into our environment? Because at your co-op, you have that power. You have these principles, and then you also have that power to where you can incorporate these principles into a thriving community. So where do you start? Right where you are now. It's important, and one thing that I often like to stress to people is it's never too late to go back to your principles and decide your identity. Especially with starting co-ops, a lot of times, just in conversations that I've heard quite a few people say, well, we didn't really figure out our identity. We didn't know where we wanted to start as far as getting people engaged in what we're doing. Our focus was maybe on the money. Our focus was on getting, 1,000 people's signatures on a piece of paper. You start right where you are. You stand still and look around. Where are you? Who do you really want to impact? Who do you want to grow into? Visit other co-ops, talk to other co-ops, but start right where you are. Not just in your members, but who are the organizations that you want to make sure you're aligned with from the very beginning? So maybe it is the Boys and Girls Club. Maybe it is a local food pantry. Maybe it is a school. But whatever it is, essentially making sure that you're doing that from the very beginning and from where you are right now. We're all grounded in these principles, but we can all look different. So when you go to every co-op, you see the community where you are. So it's going to look probably quite different from a lot of other grocery stores, from a lot of other businesses that you go to, that people not only are there, but people understand why your co-op exists. So it's not just, oh, I'm going to shop over here, I'm going to shop your co-op, but I'm going to shop the co-op because they accept me for who I am. I get a vote. I get to participate in a different way. And I know that when I round up, it goes to this organization down the street. And they also give me opportunities that I hadn't maybe thought of before. So maybe you're holding a cooking class. Who's coming to your cooking classes? Is it all American cuisine? Is it a cultural cuisine? What are you providing to your community? And what are you allowing your community to provide to your co-op? Super important. This is where
I'm going to jump in here. Someone direct messaged me, so I assume that they would prefer to be anonymous. They said they understand a lot of this and they really appreciate this. And their community doesn't look a lot like the food co-op communities they've seen before. And even the idea of a food co-op sometimes puts people off because that isn't who we are. Can you just speak to that? Like the whole, we like P6ing and sharing information and all that, but it's almost alienating to our community to compare ourselves to other food co-ops.
Yeah. To be completely honest, I'll say, don't compare yourself to other food co-ops. That's just it. Your food co-op is your food co-op. So it's, to me, I would say it's the same as being in my house and being in someone else's house and saying, your house doesn't look like my house. My house is my house. This is where I am. This is a reflection of me. So I can't walk into your house and expect you to have pictures of my family or my favorite colors or anything that I own in your closet. Instead, my co-op is me. So the same as, Weaver Street Market's not the same as REI. We don't carry well, we might have a few of the same products. I think we both carry Burt's Bees, but we don't carry the same products. We don't have the same customer base. Customers are going into REI because they're into nature. They're into outdoors. That's what they're in there shopping for. We don't sell Patagonia jackets, but when you come into Weaver Street Market, you are going to see that local vendor. You are going to see, farmers coming in the back door and they're going to be dropping off their products. You are going to see people hula hooping outside. The REI here, you may not see that. I'm not even sure, but I don't think you're going to see that. So essentially, yes, don't compare yourself to other co-ops, essentially, but there is an idea sharing that can happen as well. So even when you go to other co-ops and saying, so how do you reflect your community? Go to those co-ops that, don't kind of rise to the top of this is where you have to go. Go to the smaller ones. Check those out and see, wow, this feels different. And notice the differences. To me, it's small things like, what music are you playing? Are you playing an elevator music? Are you playing jazz? Been into co-ops. I mean, I was just in Minneapolis. I love the music that they played in all of their co-ops, to be honest. And I came home and said, can we play some R&B and like some slow jazz? But it really is that. And then also to address, I think that co-ops, and I would love to even expand on this. This is another session, another day. Co-ops are at its foundation cooperation. So to me, even hearing the word co-op or cooperative is foreign to a lot of people. I do feel like it's a bit of a privilege to even say I'm shopping at a co-op, to even say I'm in close proximity of a co-op. So co-ops may sound just off-putting or very strange to a lot of people, but cooperation is what everybody does every day. It's how communities have existed for hundreds and thousands of years. And it genuinely is that start of, if we help you with this, can you help us with that? So that's really just the start of the conversation. Yes, the co-op is this entity. It is this place that you can walk us into. Not all co-op has to look the same. So they're not all this large footprint, high, tall lighting, everything happens. A co-op looks like what your community can actually do. So maybe a co-op is a bodega. Maybe a co-op is beside a laundromat. A co-op is where you are and what you can provide that your community needs. It's about the mutual aid of it. So if your community isn't asking for, like 45 different types of cheese in a cold case that come from all around the world, then don't have that, because you're going to bring it in and you're not going to sell it. And nobody's going to want it. And then you're going to wonder why your cheese selection is just not getting it. If people are asking for a good cheddar that doesn't go bad, that they can have available every day of the week, make that your cheese case. Your co-op has to reflect your community. So it will be up to you as you're building and you're looking at other co-ops and saying, so this is nice, but it's not us. Can we find something in their model that we can actually apply to what we do? A couple cool things that they did, they had this really neat hot case where, they had rotisserie chickens. They had a small, like a great variety of ice creams that we know that people would want. But at its core, it's going to be reaching out to your community and saying, what do you want to see in your co-op? Knowing what you're coming to the co-op for.
There's a follow comment from them just saying, I love the metaphor. All of us want to have warm, welcoming homes to our families, so make it for your family. But I can learn from the way you designed your house what I might want to include.
Absolutely.
Nice.
Yes. great segue into, this is your co-op identity. This is genuinely the identity of your co-op. So if you haven't already, I would welcome you to go to any and all co-ops, but essentially, this is your chance to build, this is who we are. This is our community. This is essentially, we listened to people and said, what do you want? What can we provide to you? And this is our answer to that. So not just in what the product selection is, but our identity is who's checking you out, who's working at our meat counter, who's cooking your food. These are people in our community. You have the ability, you have the power. That's a pretty extreme power to say, who are we aligning ourselves with? Put it in your mission statement, in your values. You have principles to work off of. So in building those principles and really putting it together, this is your opportunity. I'll say for me, I like to liken it to exactly what this photo is. It's a patchwork quilt. So when you say quilt, most people know what it is. The blanket, it covers you, it keeps you warm, but there's an identity to it. So when you're putting together this patchwork quilt and you're deciding, what colors are going to be there and what patterns are going to be there and how large it's going to be, look around with eyes wide open. Who are you teaching to now take part in this patchwork quilt? Maybe some people didn't know how to stitch prior to this. Who gets the opportunity to stitch it? Is it one person doing the whole thing? Or are you having different community members come in and contribute the way that they can to make sure that it kind of represents me? When I walk through, I can say, I did that part right there. That was pretty cool. And then where does it hang? Or does it hang? Do you even put it up, or is it always a work in progress? You have it up for a little while and then you take it down, you clean it, you reevaluate it. How does this work? That's your co-op identity. This is what you're putting together and saying, okay, this makes sense based on these principles. We want to make sure that everybody comes in, every member of our community, current and future members. So maybe you haven't signed in yet. Maybe you haven't said, yes, I want to be a part of this. Maybe you just moved. You're not even sure what this place is, but you heard it from a neighbor. Or maybe you moved into an apartment complex and they had a flyer and it said, hey, come join the co-op. And you're thinking, I'm not really sure. You're speaking to all of these people, not just to come and shop and to come and patronize your co-op, but also to see themselves in that patchwork quilt and say, wow, I've never seen this before. This is pretty neat. I could see myself working here. And I could see myself managing a place like this, or even better, I could see myself actually moving to wherever I plan to go because I want to do exactly what this co-op did. I want to bring the community together in a way that I haven't seen many other places do, where people can identify with it, not just the co-op itself, but also its partners, and actually feel like, yeah, not only do I belong where I now am, but I can always go back home because your co-op is home. So my baton as I hand off, I'm not too sure how fast I went, but my baton is to use your gift. You are doing a big job. You are essentially saying, I'm going to bring the community together in a way that I don't know if I see many other places. I'm going to try, we're going to see, and in that I say, we're all here. Again, we're cooperation amongst cooperatives. So it's bringing people together in a way that I'm not sure in this 2024, everybody does all the time. But in starting your co-op, as you're working on your capital campaign, as you're getting everything together and you're gearing up, and even once your doors are open. So this doesn't mean you're on step one and I just started. This means even as your doors are open and 20 years down the road, when everything in the world is happening. I know it happened with us at Weaver Street Market. Socially, politically, economically, every single thing is happening and you're thinking, oh my gosh, these waves are much bigger than I ever imagined. What do? You ground yourself in these principles, and that's where your identity is. You look around, eyes wide open. Who's here? Even established co-ops. Who's on our board? Does this reflect our community? You can start with just the numbers, just the census data. What does it tell me? Who actually lives around me? When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's not just race and gender. We're talking economic diversity. We're talking neurodiversity. We're talking about, do we have a true representation of who we want to reach? Do we have different generations? Grocery shopping is different now than it was 35 years ago when Weaver Street Market opened. 35 years ago, few people were thinking of an app. Few people were thinking of a shopping cart where you just put your groceries in and it tells you what you bought. It really is looking at that. And who do you have the conversation with to say, is this even a good idea? Because we're small. So we know that we've got a portion of our budget where all we want to do is donate food. So we're not an Amazon, we're not a Whole Foods, but it is talking about, does our community even want that? A lot of people don't want to walk into a highly technical grocery shopping experience. They want people that are going to talk to them through the register. They want people that are going to tell them what the new demo is going to be on Saturday. They want to interact with their vendors. They want to go outside. They want to be there all day, do their homework on their laptop. So it's really connecting with that community today and forever, because you want your co-op to be multi-generational and throughout all of those generations to continue to reflect the community in which it lives. So your work, and essentially your gift, is your work. Your work is building and shaping your co-op. It's digging down deep and saying, okay, these are our 8 principles. How are they reflected in the work that we do? Is it very Rochdale Pioneers where it's, here's some icons, this totally makes sense? Or is it the people? And your people look different. I mean, even twins look different. So it really is even bringing it back to that initial question of, when we're talking about co-ops, my co-op looks different from everybody else's, but your co-op is what your community wants and has said that they need. That's what's important. Your community didn't say that they needed the co-op that you went to, or maybe the one that you saw, or the one that's speaking. It might be completely different, but there might be parts of that where you're like, oh, yeah, this kind of makes sense. So even once as you're building and shaping that cooperative, embodying those principles, bringing it into the core work of what you do. The same way that when you wake up in the morning and you make your coffee and you get dressed and you head into work and it's just your routine, make this your routine. Create this as your norms. So it's really not even thought about. When you're doing your hiring process and you're saying, okay, we're looking for everybody, write that in. What does it mean to say we're looking for everybody? We are able to hire a working mom that has to take the bus to work every day. We are talking about students. You can come in and maybe this is your summer job. Is your hiring process allowing for that? Is your workflow allowing for that? And then once these norms exist, live in them, settle in them, check in with your community. Make sure, hey, how do y'all feel when you come here? Are you finding the products that you're looking for? Do you feel like we're representing the community well? Is there something that we can do better or we can do more? Because you're going to continue to double down on the people that are not only working within your actual co-op, but the people that are working with your co-op and then the organizations that you're aligned with. So I'm going to stop there and see if there are any questions for me. I could go on forever. So.
Well, first off, don't be shy. Anyone, now is the time. If you have comments, questions, throw them in the chat. And we'll ask individuals to unmute if you're interested. But this group seems to like to send me private messages. That happens sometimes. Yeah. So, and okay. So, and I will ask folks to throw their question in the chat, or at least the topic of their question, and then I will ask you to unmute based on the topic or what the question is. But we had somebody great who said, democratic participation is a hard one for me to explain. It seems like once the store is open, only the managers are making decisions. Throw that to you.
Yes. So democratic participation is difficult, in all honesty. So I think that you can look at it 2 different ways. One is kind of the ownership of the voting. So each owner gets 1 vote. They vote for the board. The board essentially works with the general manager, the operations, in order to say, this is the direction that we want to see it. We want to see the co-op go. And then there's also the democratic participation within leadership. That is the difficult part. Welcome to co-ops. So essentially, really, that's hard. It's building that leadership model to where everybody gets to contribute. It's the culture. And yet I would love to do a whole probably 3-day session on when you build your co-op, you also have to build your co-op culture that cannot be forgotten. So your culture is, what is your leadership? Is it completely top down? Nobody says anything. If you're on the bottom, then you have to find your way up to the top. Or is it something to where everybody gets to say, I think this would actually work better? It's hard because everywhere you go, it's usually not, hey, how do you want to participate in this? Well, I really don't want to come to work today. That's really hard. That's not how we're going to stay open. That's not how we're going to work. It really is. It's building into the culture, and the culture is in everything you do. The culture is in who gets to speak, who speaks first, who is allowed at the table. It's how is your handbook written? So if your handbook is written to where your manager gets to say and do whatever they want to do with little to no repercussion, that's what your culture will reflect. So it'll be written in everything that you do. And it'll also be just the differences in enforcing it. So if you do have somebody, you know, if Weaver Street Market does have somebody coming from Harris Teeter, it's a hard lesson. When you come and you say, well, I've worked 20 years in this other place and that's how it was. But if you come into a space where the culture that you're bringing is not recognized because you're in a culture that's now open. So when you come and say, well, I'm a manager, you have to listen. And everyone else says, that's actually not how we do it. No. And none of our policies, practices, or procedures reflect that. So that's just not what we're going to do. So it's a hard lesson. It's a hard way to move, but it's very important from the beginning and also from where you are, that you are establishing that culture, that you're saying from the very beginning, this is where we want to be and this is where we have to be, because we want to make sure that no matter what level you are, you have a say in the work that you do and how you execute it.
We got some more questions streaming in. So first I want to answer Erica, yes, you can get in contact with Allanah with the email that is on the screen. And if folks are interested, raising of hands or quick note in the chat, I can send, you're going to get like a email right after the session, but I can send an additional email with Alannah's contact info if you feel like I'm not going to get this off the screen right now. So if there's interest in that, go ahead and raise the hands. Okay, I'll be sending out the contact info for Allanah. But she was asking, Erica, you want to go ahead and ask about, like, you know, we're in a different city. Could you do do you offer a virtual tour? And for those watching, if you know a co-op that has a good video virtual tour of their co-op, throw that in the chat. People are always looking for this, but I'll throw that to you, Allanah.
So the question is if we have a virtual tour?
Yeah, if you have a virtual tour or some way for people to like connect, because I'm somewhere where there aren't any co-ops.
So we don't. That is actually, it's funny you ask, because that is actually on my request list for our general manager today. But we, up to this point, we haven't. It's always been in person. It's what we love to do. We love to walk you through our co-op. But the more that we connect with co-ops around the world, to be honest, not just throughout the nation, the more that we do that, the more we are realizing that we do need a virtual tour. So the closest that we have is a video of Weaver Street to essentially say, why not? You know, like, what if you were able to connect with your vendors, with your producers, with the community in a different way? But we don't have a virtual tour yet, but stay tuned. My hope is that we will have one in the next probably 5 or 6 months.
And Allanah, can I promise people that I will get that link to that video that does exist from you, and we can send that as well? Okay. Okay, we got a whole bunch. All right, we're gonna jump back up here and say, oh, okay, this is a big one, Allanah. But any suggestions for entering food insecure areas in large cities? Seems different from where co-ops have traditionally been more successful. Any differences to the model?
Lots of differences. So many differences. To me, the biggest difference, and again, this could go forever, so I'll give you the abridged version. To me, the biggest difference is that your community is going to look, act, and receive very differently from many large co-op models. So Weaver Street Market has 4 locations. We're in some pretty affluent communities, and that's really kind of on purpose. You know, not to kind of go into the history and get super deep into it, but a lot of it's going to be, one, you're undoing a lot of historical norms, a lot of things that created this food insecure area. So it didn't just happen. It happened over time and it happened over history. A lot of times happened over legislation. So it's going to be doing that. And then it's also going to be presenting this food model to people that may or may not be familiar with exactly how to handle it. So you know, even once it's established, let's say you have your co-op and the doors are open, then it's going to be getting the food there. So it's going to be having the larger distributors come and get, you know, and fill your shelves, things like that. Yes, it's difficult, but it's not too difficult to where you can't do it. If you think there are models that can do it, as everybody, you know, has probably heard, Dollar General can do it every day. So it's going to take a lot more work and a lot more unconventional methods. But yes, it is absolutely possible. And I would love to talk about it more. Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So again, you can reach out, email address. I will send the email address and the link to the video about their co-op. I don't mean to jump over you, Dana. I will come back. But Elizabeth brought up. So first off, really glad you brought this up. Said it helps me personally to remember movements of co-op movements have roots in many different communities, not just Rochdale, and how the images of white men calling themselves pioneers could be triggering for a lot of folks. And she brings up Collective Courage, A History of African American Cooperation, phenomenal book by Dr. Jessica Gordon Nebhard. Absolutely do search that out. We bring this up in our Quick Start training. If you go to our online free FCI Quick Start training for new board members of Start Food Co-ops, we talk about this, and we have a video with Tamar Yisrael from the last FCI Live series where she goes into that history. So we do have a few resources, but any thoughts you want to add, Allanah, on this?
All of the thoughts. So essentially, I started where I figured a lot of people would understand, but exactly what you said. Yes, co-ops did not just start with the Rochdale Pioneers. Also, co-ops are cooperation. It genuinely is. So to me, it starts even further. It starts just with the concept. Everybody knows how to cooperate. I mean, it's little things. It's a barter system when you were in school and saying, you know, can I borrow your pencil if I give you some paper? It's those things. So yes, historically, I'm very glad that you brought that up. So many sentiments. And if you have not read Collective Courage, please read it. Buy copies for all of your friends and family. It is a fantastic book. Yes.
It should be kind of mandatory reading if within reason. I know some of us have some disabilities around reading, but including myself, but if mandatory reading if you're going to organize a food co-op, in my opinion. This is a great question. It's a big one, but it's a great question. Dana, do you want to unmute and share this, or would you prefer I do it?
I'm fine sharing.
Cool.
So Allanah, this is obviously specific to our co-op, but I think the root of the question applies to a lot of different co-ops. We had a small group of original owners that got together, said, hey, we want to do this thing, this co-op. We are not in a food desert, but not necessarily not in a food insecure area. There's still a lot of food insecurity. But we had a group of people that wanted more access to local food. Our conventional grocery stores don't really have that. They wanted to not rely on corporate conventional grocers that don't give back to the community, that don't provide for the local economy and feed back into that. But when I look at where our co-op is going to be, which is in Chicago, in a very diverse, extraordinary environment, it's really challenging for me to kind of understand how do we meet the needs of that big and that diverse of a community. So I don't know if this is true just for huge urban communities, if this is true in other smaller areas, but I'm struggling with how do we balance the needs of this vast community when we know we can't be everything to everyone, and balancing that with those unique desires of this original members of the co-op. It's kind of like we have a niche in this huge, neighborhood. So how do we stay true to that, but still be inclusive? Does that make sense?
Yes. Big question. big question. I think a few things can happen here. I'll say one, how are you reaching out to the communities that you would like to serve in order to make sure that you are serving them correctly? I know, a lot of times we often talk about register survey in kind of different ways. One thing that I like to remind people is you can give me what you think I want, but that might not be what I want. If you didn't ask me what I want, then I still really might not want to participate in what you're giving me. I think it is important, and you said something that's very important as well, is you can't be everybody's everything. So, I know looking at our area, there's specifically an Asian market that is so big and robust, and I personally love it. I go at least once a week, but we as Weaver Street Market are not that grocery store. We just cannot handle it. We don't even know it. I'll be honest, we don't know the products, we don't know where they come from. It really is a thing of who do you want to impact? When you say diverse, I would question what that means, really defining that. So are you looking for a higher income, medium, and a lower income? Are you looking for the working poor to be able to come and really feel like they can extend their dollar in the same way, that they can stop by after school, kind of, and then really, who do you want to come and really engage? Within what perimeter? So being realistic, are people going to drive 20 miles to come to your co-op? How many grocery stores are they going to pass on the way? And then when you do that, when you decide who do we want to impact, talk to those communities. You have to. It's the only way that you can do it. Google is great, but Google won't get it. Speaking around them, speaking to, hey, I see that you're also working with these people, is there a way that you can also tell us? No, because the last thing that I want is for somebody else to tell you my story. I want to tell you my story, because what you see may not be the true me. So even in an intro and say, this is what Allanah does and why she does it. Yeah, let me tell you what I want. You might see what I eat at work, but that's not what I eat at home, which is oftentimes the case. I might not have a salmon cake at work because I'm going to be warming it up in the break room microwave, and nobody's going to appreciate that. But when I get home, it's salmon cakes or us. So it really is that thing of reach out to the people that you want to invest in, the people that you want to bring into your house, the people that yeah, this is our community now. That's also a conversation with your founding members to say, y'all did a really great thing. Now it's time to grow. Now we know that we have other populations, we have other people that we want to really reach into. If you are in a food insecure area, look at why it's food insecure. What is it? Because as much as, and I'll say I don't like the term food desert, I will say food apartheid, because desert and apartheid are two different things. But it really is one of those things of, why is it that this community does not have equal access to food? And how are you able to overcome that barrier? Is it because food is too expensive? Is it because grocery stores have been taken out of their area? Is it because there just isn't fresh food access to these members? And then also, as you establish this, continue to reach out to the community and say, would you shop here? Is this a place that even feels comfortable to you? If not, what can we do to break down that barrier? So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of reaching out, but it's also a lot of conversations. It's meeting people where they are. You can't stay where you are and say, how do we fix it? You have to go to where people are and say, we're here. Please accept us. We'll come back as many times as you want. Show up with food. It works for us a lot. Show up with food. Hey, we have this. We're having this event. We would love for you to come. We'd love for you to, come and see how you feel about it. Is it something you feel like you could participate in? Was the food good? Did it need more seasoning? Is it something that you would eat one way or another? Have them be honest. That's the only way that you're going to improve. It's absolutely doable. And Chicago's a big area, a really big area to cover. It's doable.
Awesome. I loved that. And there was a quick question, a quick just follow up, because we have like 1 minute to go here before I need to wrap us up. Someone said, exactly, succession planning that includes leadership training so founding members have community successors. This is really big for everyone, but this I know is a particularly big conversation in Black-led food co-ops serving predominantly Black communities is how's our co-op going to continue to reflect us? So love that comment from Fertile Ground. Any last comments or thoughts you want to share with us, Allanah, before we start to wrap up?
I would say let's keep the conversation going. My hope is that even after this hour, this isn't the last time that this conversation happens. I'm glad that there's so many questions. Keep asking questions. Keep wondering, how do I see myself when we create this co-op identity? Am I actually reflecting the community? And I actually love that it came up. Thank you, Fertile Ground, my folks right down the street. Yes, succession planning. So it's not just the people that made it, but it's also, is your succession planning reflective of your community as well? So make sure if you are in a predominantly Black neighborhood that you do have some, your managers, your GM, the people that are there can see themselves as running this co-op as well.
Excellent. I am going to wrap us up, but I've just put something in the chat that I really hope y'all will take advantage of. We have a little tiny short survey at the end of each session, so we know if this particular topic was valuable to you. It means so much to us. If you guys could go and fill that out, you will receive an email in like about a minute as well with that link. So I want to take this moment just to thank Allanah so much for being here and sharing on this critical topic that so many of you have been asking for. Thank you so much, Allanah. And she's going to be back. She started our FCI Live series. She's going to end it for us too next Friday. So check out the lineup and find out what more topics she's sharing with us if you loved this session. So a couple things just to know coming up later tonight. Someone forgot the letter E here, but going mobile, launching your co-op food co-op app. We're going to have, this is a case study with an actual peer who has done it, talking about the ins and outs and was it worth it and was it not. And then tomorrow, a co-op approach to data sharing and gathering is another session you guys have been begging for that is reaching capacity really quickly in registration. We hope you'll come out and join us with that. We're so excited to have the Data Commons Cooperative joining us. And then building justice tomorrow night, envisioning white-led startups, continuing this diversity, equity, inclusion conversation, and looking at how we serve communities if we're truly creating welcome, and if we're accidentally embedding white supremacy culture into our co-ops as we're forming them. That's with Patrice Lockhart Anthony. If you've ever seen a session with her before, she's excellent on this topic from Black Label Consulting and Coaching. We do real quick want to thank our sponsors who've made this series possible and will make the rest of the series possible. We are so grateful to them, and we hope we will see you in the rest of the series. And those who want to stay and ask and unmute and ask a few more questions, Allanah has agreed to do that. So I'm going to stop our recording now and wrap this up. Thank you for being here, and then we can chat.